I don't think AI solves all problems and should replace humans in general. I think it's just going to allow us to do more of everything more faster, more content, faster content, better content, higher quality, more graphics. I don't think it's going to replace or reduce the workforce in marketing. I think it's just going to allow us to finally do everything we always wanted to do in the first place. So it's going to explode the amount of content and production and all this stuff that's out there in a big way. So it's a cool opportunity.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Scale a Business podcast. My name is Hector Santiesteban, and I'm your host for today. Our special guest is Mr. David Reske. He is the author of 100X Entrepreneur. He's the CEO and founder of Now Speed, and someone who is just making things happen out in the world today. So David, thanks for being with us today.
Hector, thanks for having me on the show.
I think it's helpful for people to get a little bit of context on how people got to what they got to. And then we're going to dive into, what you're doing with your clients and how you're helping them to grow and market. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear about a little bit about your story and some of the key stops along the way and why you decided that marketing and all, I'm saying that in a simplified term, but why you decided to pick the path that you decided to pick.
Sure. So yes, I've been at this quite a while. So I started my career in B2B sales a long time ago. And then I started my first company kind of at the beginning of the commercial internet in 1994. So we started building websites in the 90s and grew that company up. And then I sold it in 99 to a large system integration firm, was a senior partner there for a couple of years, and then decided to do it all over again. Started this company in 2003. Now Speed's a digital agency focused on helping companies grow and be effective. And, as an agency, we do things like build websites, do SEO, do increasingly GEO, generative engine optimization, digital advertising, and those kinds of services. So I've really been around digital marketing now for about 30 years, kind of seen a lot of change and growth. Back in the day, we were building websites with Notepad, before there were content management systems. We were setting up email systems for our clients before there were marketing automation platforms. We were, doing SEO before there were SEO tools. So I've kind of seen a lot of evolution of tools and technologies. Back in the day, there were maybe dozens or a few marketing tools we could use. Now there are thousands, right? And, the infrastructure requirements have changed. So I've seen a lot of change and growth, but it's always about, for it as an agency, helping our clients leverage all this in order to grow their businesses, drive more leads, build their brand, drive engagement with their customers. So never really take the eye off of that ball.
Yeah, one of my favorite questions to ask someone who's been in an industry for as long as you have is, you mentioned some of the changes. Are there some things that are still the same, or are there some things that are still unchanged in that space?
Well, the core tenets of marketing have not changed. And so people still need to focus on who is their target customer, what is the problem or pain that they're solving, what's the best and most efficient way to reach them, right? So those are the core things. And importantly, like, what is their value proposition and how is that differentiated from others in the marketplace? So those core things. And so if we're engaged with a client and they're all excited about, spending money in advertising, or all excited about implementing a new marketing automation platform, or all excited about being found in AI search, and they haven't tackled those things, they're in huge trouble, right? So, because it's so easy to spend money and time and effort on marketing doing the wrong thing at the wrong time with the wrong customer. That stuff has not changed. And the other thing that has not changed is clients always want the most efficient way to market. So there's few companies that are going to say, hey, spend as much as you want to in all the ways you can think of in order to do a lot of good stuff, right? So nobody's saying that. Everybody's like, what's the most efficient thing you can do that's going to deliver the fastest result in the shortest amount of time? That's what I want to do first, right? So that's what I've found over time. So, whether it's implementing the newest, GEO techniques, or leveraging content for organic search, or, leveraging nurture programs or programmatic advertising. Those are all interesting, amazing technologies, but it's all in the service of how do we generate growth for our clients.
When you think about, I'm sure you see this often when you're auditing a business or going in and starting to work with someone. Is your blueprint sort of diagnose and then, will prescribe a sort of specific solution for it? Or do you see things as, most businesses are all the same generally, within industries. And so here are the key things that we need to, the foundation that we need to make down. Do you find that the solutions that you're providing are sort of different in that regard, or do you find that they all sort of follow a similar path or structure?
Well, as an agency, we're lucky because we can focus on the best tools and techniques in digital marketing. So we're not selling a single nail or a hammer that you have to do one individual thing, right? So I just talked to a company and they were a PR firm focused on writing op-ed pieces. So every time they talk to a client, what's the solution to lead gen? Oh, you need a new op-ed piece, right? So that's not our approach. So we're fortunate that we do the best things, in my opinion, in digital marketing for most firms. We're building websites, we're doing advertising, we're leveraging organic search, we're leveraging AI search, we're leveraging social media, email. Kind of these are the core things that every company needs to do well. So we kind of come to engagement with our set of skills and our bias that you need to be doing. These are the best things to do. Now, there's a lot of other things you can spend money on doing marketing, but at least you got to, in my opinion, you got to do at least these things very, very well because these are the best things to do. That said, so we come with that starting place. That said, we always diagnose before we prescribe. So one of our hallmarks as an agency at NowSpeed is we do detailed audits in each of these areas before we do a proposal. So we'll always go in if somebody's running a digital ad campaign. Let's say it's a Google campaign, it's a Meta campaign. Before we give them a proposal, part of our process is let's dig into your data, into the numbers, the campaigns, the offers, the landing pages, the website, figure out what's broken and what's working well. And guess what? We never find everything working well. The challenge in our industry is that there's just too many things to do and too many options. There's an infinite number of options, right? So, do you test every different landing page variation? Most people don't. They pick a landing page style or structure an offer that they think works best and they test variations around it. But, when we do these audits, we always find problems, some big problems where they're missing obvious best practices in paid search, or there are huge opportunities missed in organic content or whatever, and sometimes nuances, sometimes it's technical, most often it's strategic, to be honest. So there's a lot of people that could do the basics today of digital marketing well. You can find a lot of SEO experts or a lot of PPC experts. What is hard to do is integrate the strategic, what campaigns, what offers, what messages, what creative is going to blend with the right detailed campaigns and execute that well. And that's what we do well, right? From the strategic to the technical, blend all that together to an integrated result for the client. That's what we're really focused on.
Yeah, it reminds me, you mentioned this hammer analogy, and I would imagine that, there are plenty of people who can swing a great hammer, but if they don't know what they're building or how to build, the strategy part, right, is actually the thing that creates the house. I mean, otherwise, that's what separates a demolition person from, a carpenter.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like the old joke. Well, if let's say you're a general contractor, and I say, well, how much is it to build me a house? Well, what kind of house do you want to build? Right? Do you want a mansion in the Hamptons, or do you want an ADU, an auxiliary dwelling unit in the backyard of your LA home? Right. So it's a big, big difference. So, we have to understand first what the goals are, what the issues are, and, to relate to the podcast, the theme of your podcast, what your goals are for scaling. So some clients, when they talk about scaling, they mean, I want to grow by 8% this year because maybe they're already a large organization and they've got modest goals. Other companies are like, hey, we're at a million. Want to go to 15 million, right? Well, that's solving a different problem. Some clients have a very proven value proposition and they're very clear about the product market fit and they've got really good, an understanding what offers are effective and they just need a team that can scale that up. Some people have no idea really what's working yet and they've got to figure out what the product market fit is and what the best offers are and they're still, they got to figure that out. So we come in, very much diagnosing the strategic and the tactical and then figure out what's broken and what's working and then what's the most efficient way to get them toward their goals.
Are there any blind spots or maybe misconceptions that business owners have about marketing or tech or any of the things that you do that you come in and it's kind of like that needle in the eye video where the boyfriend's like, just take the needle out of your eye, and the girlfriend is saying the problem is anything but that. Do you find that there are common issues or common things that people are doing that are sort of shooting themselves in the foot, if you will?
In some ways, what's really interesting is that general knowledge of digital marketing has gone up dramatically among the buyers in my market, whether it's a CMO. When we talk to CMOs, they really understand all the pieces that are going on. Whereas 15 years ago, you might have had a CMO that came out of marketing communications that didn't really understand how websites work or what organic search was all about or how, PPC campaigns work. And they were looking for an agency to run it, even though they didn't really understand it. Today, they understand it, right? If you're in that role, you understand all the pieces and things that are going on. And I'm always also amazed that CEOs really understand SEO, and even AI search, and they're kind of the level of understanding is much greater. And I think that's a good thing for the industry because they know what they're buying and they want to know what their needs are, and they know what's scaling. But in terms of misunderstandings or misconceptions, I think that one of the things that I still find is that sometimes it looks easy, right, to the outsider. They're like, well, why can't you just create 100 pieces of content and use AI to create all the ads and then automatically upload them to Google and have it automatically manage the campaigns to drive the best outcomes and automatically add all this content for SEO purposes to your website and have 1,000 pieces out there that drive organic traffic to create leads. Can't you do that by tomorrow? So there is this perception that it's easy to do all this when in reality there's a lot of systems and technical expertise that have to be touched in order to build a landing page or to think properly about an offer or design a piece of content or to you can have ChatGPT write something, but is it correct factually, but is it also correct with your brand? So it takes quite a bit of human effort to come alongside all of these technologies, and a client might be using 20 or 30 or 50 different tools and technologies that all have to be integrated and worked through together. So you want that landing page to work with HubSpot. You want the tracking from Google Analytics to be consistent. You want the lead nurture series to go out in a certain way, consistent with your emails and offers. You want all those landing pages out there. So it takes a lot of labor, a lot of coordination, a lot of human effort to do that. And I think, the benefit of being with an agency is we have experts that do that all day long. So what might take us 10 hours a month to do, a client often is hiring a full-time employee who's spending 160 hours a month doing that same thing. But we just, that's the benefit of working with an agency. You pay more per hour, but you get someone who's an expert and who does this all day long, and they're very efficient and effective at getting all that together. So, we're as an agency, again, because we have a broad set of skills, we can bring people to bear on offer strategy, landing page design, update the website, get the campaign running in HubSpot, integrate it with the with the campaign and paid search, post the social, get the whole thing running very, very quick.
Yeah. I think the other challenge that you sort of bring up when it comes to, the skill level of these individuals is that things are evolving so fast, and things are changing not only from a technological perspective, but politically, geopolitically, economically. There's so many things that are in flux that it is a challenge, or it requires effort to consistently be at that cutting edge.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really invest a lot of time with our employees to make sure that they're experts in all these different areas. But I think that's a constant challenge. And I think, AI is a great example of that that's happening right now. And what's interesting is that I talk to people every day about AI and how they're using it. And some people are still of the mindset, well, like, oh, it's okay, but it makes lots of mistakes and can't really trust it. And you can use it, but then you have to rewrite everything. And other people are like, oh no, we use it for everything. And it's super fast and efficient. Of course, we have to check our work at the end, but it's helping us scale and grow immeasurably. So you have this, not only have you have the technical divide, you have a little bit of a philosophical divide on using these tools, right? So other people might say, oh yeah, you can use it for a prompt and get something back, but I would never trust it for an entire workflow, right? To make sure that it's doing everything in a whole marketing campaign. And other people are saying, Oh, of course, we use it for the whole workflow, right? Saves us tons of time and gets things done rapidly. So, it's very interesting. I think that in this time of change, there are still people kind of clinging to, let's keep doing it the old way because the new way simply can't work. And I guess I've just been doing this long enough that I say the new way always works. It might not work perfectly at first, but hey, the people who said when CRM systems came in, I'll date myself again. People are like, oh, no, no, I can keep my whole list of prospects in a spreadsheet. What are you talking about? CRM system? That seems so complicated. I can learn a whole new software system. I would never use a CRM system. I got my spreadsheet. I like it. But today, if a VP of sales said that, you'd say, you're not going to have a job anymore, right? Yeah, we can't do that, right? That's insane, right? But the system, we just got better with the systems. And I think that's what's happening with AI today. There is definitely risk in applying it badly, but we're going to figure out how to apply it well in every way it can possibly do it. Now, that said, I don't think AI solves all problems and should replace humans in general. I think it's just going to allow us to do more of everything more faster, more content, faster content, better content, higher quality, more graphics. I don't think it's going to replace or reduce the workforce in marketing. I think it's just going to allow us to finally do everything we always wanted to do in the first place. So it's going to explode the amount of content and production and all this stuff that's out there in a big way. So that's a cool opportunity.
Yeah. When we get back from break, David, I'm curious, I try and structure these so that if they listen to the beginning of this conversation, they can listen to it in 2025 or 2035 or 2045 and be totally applicable, which I think is important. But when we get back from break, I'm curious about some of the specific tactics or some of the specific things that you're learning when it comes to some of these new technologies or new marketing channels and avenues. And I'm excited because you've been doing it, you actually have your hands in the dirt there making it happen. So we're going to get into that right after this quick break. Hey, y'all, today's episode is brought to you by Amplify Media, and we are a podcast and content production company. Well, we actually like to think of ourselves as like the fractional media part of your company because chances are, if you're listening to this, you probably have a product, a passion, a mission, a message, some sort of service that you're trying to get out to the world, but you might not have the time, the team, or the tech skills to be able to do it. If that's the case, we can help. Go to amplifymedia.com. That's AMPLAFY media.com. You can also check the show notes for the link. And with that, let's get back to David. David, I'm so excited to ask you about, I don't even know what they call it. I've heard some people call it AEO. I've heard all the acronyms, but it's basically how do you leverage AI for your business, right? And it seemed, there was this whole thing about search evolving and search going away. And I'm not here to make any of those predictions or whatever, but just to find out what's working or what's not working. And so when it comes to trying to help businesses leverage things like AI, what sort of things are you learning or realizing in doing some of that?
So, in the category of what I'll call AI search, which is really about making sure that your company is visible when somebody asks a question in the LLMs. Let's talk about that category for a second, because you can use AI for a whole bunch of other things. But in that category, we have a practice we call generative engine optimization, which essentially is like SEO, but for the LLMs. And so the idea of GEO is that people are now searching, or they're really not searching, they're asking questions in the LLMs. So before we went to Google and searched, right? And that optimization for SEO was around keywords. Generally, people search with using keywords or very, very short phrases. With the LLMs, people are asking detailed questions, long form queries, having detailed, long conversations in ChatGPT, in Google Gemini, and those kinds of tools, right? For example, so I'm looking for solar energy for a solution for my house, right? So, in the old days, I might have searched for solar providers, Boston, right? And so, and I get maybe a list of providers, and I make a phone call and ask them some questions, and I get a proposal, right? Today, what I would do, differently, right? So I start off by having a detailed conversation, and I'm like, well, what are your energy needs? How much solar wattage you need? Do you want battery backup? Where are you located? Because so I had like an hour long interaction, right? With now I'm super knowledgeable about solar and what the capabilities were. And at the end of that conversation with ChatGPT, in this case, I say, well, what are the providers in my area that could give me a quote? And it gives me three, right? That's cool. And I think that it's omniscient and it knows the best three providers. Who am I going to call? I'm going to call those three, right? What if you're the fourth one? What if you're the sixth one? What if you're the 10th one? You don't get called at all. So the idea with GEO is helping that fourth, fifth, sixth company get visible with the LLMs so they become one of the providers that are recommended. The analogy I use these days is it's like you've been given a brand new sales rep. Doesn't cost you anything. Sales rep, he or she's out there, and you say to that sales rep, "Hey, just go to my website, learn everything you can, and represent me. You'll be fine." Right? You would never do that. You're going to give that sales rep some training and some knowledge and a briefing. Here's some case studies. Here's examples. Here's why we're better. Here's some cheat sheets. You're going to give them a whole sales training course before you unleash them on the world. But we've kind of unleashed ChatGPT and Google Gemini as our sales reps out in the world without any training. So our GEO practice does a couple things. One, it helps clients understand where they are today. So what's your current status? What are the questions people in your market are asking? And do you show up in the LLMs? And are there links back to you at all, right? So are you even visible? It's kind of a visibility test. And then we come up with what we call a content map that says, well, if these are the questions, what are all the questions your buyers are asking for all phases of the buying cycle, for all personas, for all of your products? What are all the questions they're asking? And do you have content that answers those questions? This is like the training guide for LLMs. Do you have that? If you don't have that, we will help you write it. So it's basically writing all this content. And then the third part we call business authority. What are all the places that the LLMs go to see if you're a trustworthy source? The review sites, the directory sites, the news sites, all of those. And so we evaluate those and we do audits in all those categories. And then we help our clients build that out. So we'll do the analysis, figure out what the questions are, write the content, audit the external sites, and then build out content for the external sites to help them train really the LLMs to represent them better so they show up, so they get traction. I mean, today there's about 800 million people that use just ChatGPT on a monthly basis. Do you think you want to show up when they're asking about products and services? Absolutely. If you don't, you're missing a massive opportunity. That's kind of a long answer, sorry, but that's really what we're doing in this area.
No, that's fantastic. And I have such a naive and frankly ignorant perspective on this. So don't be offended by the question because I think there is some real nuance that you're talking about. But it sounds very similar to SEO in the sense of that could very well be effective for an SEO strategy. How might it different, or what are some of the nuances that you find are different from a traditional SEO strategy?
The biggest difference is that SEO is focused on keywords. So SEO always starts with a keyword analysis, keyword visibility, and you're tracking keyword visibility. In the LLMs, it's much more about queries or questions. So what are all the questions your buyers are asking? Now, the questions contain keywords, right? But it's a whole different strategy. So you're not really writing generic blog articles and contain a keyword or the keywords in the meta tags so that you show up on that keyword. You try to really answer the question and train the LLMs that I have the real answer to that question, right? And so that content becomes a source for the LLMs to answer. So my brother has a problem with trees with this certain blight in his neighborhood, right? It's like a little worm that's eating all the trees and kind of killing trees. I forget the name of the tree. So he searches in ChatGPT about, what are solutions to tree blight with this particular species and this worm, and he's having this conversation. And then at the end, he's like, well, what are landscapers or tree experts in my area that could help me with this? And one comes up and they've written a detailed article that answers this question. And that's why they showed up, right? So we're trying to answer questions and have that, have that level of detailed authority. So it takes a lot deeper content strategy. And then that content also needs to be reflected with these external sources to make sure you're a source of trust.
It seems like it allows a business to be, the words that's coming to mind is authentic and actually helpful or valuable. Because I find that so much of the SEO strategy was creating blog articles that weren't actually helpful to a human. And it seems
Right.
like the shift is to, instead, like to your point, instead of focusing on just stuffing the keyword in there, to actually creating valuable content and the answers to these questions.
Yeah, and the reality is the LLMs are good at detecting crappy content. They're really good at detecting who really does have great content with great authority, and they really are finding. So the other part of this is auditing, are they saying accurate things about you? When we do these audits, we often find that the LLMs don't represent your brand that well. They say, well, what are the weaknesses of your company? And they list, weaknesses, and they're like, well, that's not a weakness of mine. Why are they saying my competitor is better? It's because you haven't trained them. You haven't created the content that's educated. So we do feel like these content maps, we also call them LLM briefing books. So essentially you're briefing, you're kind of educating them and making sure that they know everything that you want them to know about you. And it is much deeper than like that, a shallow blog strategy.
Yeah. What's the timeline that you either have in your head or that you are sort of, if you're sharing it with your clients? Because I think a lot of people thought, oh, I have a couple of years or I have a few years, or, some people said 3 to 5 years before things get really weird. Are you of that mind, or how quickly do you think that, if we were to call it an AI revolution, like how long do business owners have to sort of make this adjustment?
I think they have months. I think I mean, if you ask anybody, what are you doing to search for, solve a problem or search for anything these days? Is anybody saying, "Oh yeah, I go to Google, I put in a keyword, and then I read all the articles there. I read all the blog articles, and then I try to synthesize what to do or what the best vendors are." Who's saying that? No, they're all going to ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Perplexity or Claude, and they're asking the AI to do all that for them. Everybody's doing that. So I think if you're not doing this now, and the people who build all this content now are going to be the leaders. Think about if you could have done an amazing job with SEO in 2005 for your business and been a leader there with amazing content for all of that time. Why wait, till 2030 to start this kind of effort? That's just insane to me. So I think everybody needs to be doing this now.
Yeah, I think we're past the fad stage, or people who thought that it was just going to be a fad. I think we're well past that. Dave, I got two more questions for you as we round out here. The first one is, if people want to get more connected with you, go deeper in your world, follow up with you. I think you even have some resources and content that you guys put out. Where's the best place for people to go?
Two great places. Go to our website at nowspeed.com. There we've got guides, we've got podcasts, we've got blog articles. We have a lot of content that can help anybody look at this area. We actually just published an updated GEO guide that's got a lot of good resources there. And then if someone wants to interact with me directly, go to LinkedIn. So David Reske on LinkedIn, I'm easy to find. And I'd love to, answer questions or interact with anybody on this topic.
Amazing. And we'll link that up in the show notes for you listeners as always. And the last question for you, David, is, in your opinion, what is the secret to scaling a business?
Oh, so yeah. So my book, The 100X Entrepreneur, we studied 20 great businesses that scaled very rapidly and published their stories in the book, and came up with 5 great things. We don't have time to go through all of those, but I think most important is really product market fit. You've got to make sure that the product you've got really solves an important problem for a lot of people, right? So I think spending more time on that than you would normally do as an entrepreneur is super important, right? And then, of course, the second piece is you've got to understand how to scale it. You've got to understand how to scale the demand part of it efficiently. So, and that's one of those are the out of the 5 core things in the book. Those two, making sure the product really solves that core problem that people are like, man, I got to have that. I really want that. That's super exciting to me. And you've got an efficient way to go to market. Yeah, I can do that, but it's $4,000 a lead. Well, that's hard, right? So it's a channel distribution. It's an ad campaign that takes off. It's a influencer strategy that gets you there. It's efficient conversion, high return on ad spend that's going to convert efficiently. Your SEO strategy. You got to have some efficient way to go to market that just takes off. And so those are my top 2.